Hi, this is Dr. Derek Hassert of the Department of Psychology at Trinity College, and I would like to spend a few moments with you right now to talk about the purpose of an institutional review board, otherwise known as a Human Subjects Review Committee. Uh, First off, I would like to mention one of the historical reasons, or several of the historical reasons for having an institutional review board, the necessity of having an institutional review board. One of the most prominent historical events that we could point to would be the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime between the years of 1933 and 1945 in Nazi Germany. Uh, there was medical research done in the concentration camps on mostly Jewish prisoners, and this was done without the individual's consent, and lasting harm came to these individuals, and most of them died in the process of the research that was done. Scientifically, the research might have been valid, but it was so ethically problematic that there are still debates today as to whether the research should even be referenced or used. We might think that the United States would be exempt from such concerns, but between the years of 1932 and 1972, the U.S. Public Health Service actually conducted experiments on 399 African American males who were largely illiterate sharecroppers. They weren't infected with syphilis, but once it was known that they had syphilis, they weren't treated. They were simply observed to see what would happen with the disease. What did the disease do? What neurological or cardiovascular effects did it have? The only thing really that these men were told was that they were being observed and they were being treated, but for bad blood. They weren't being told really what disease they had or if it could be treated. One of the physicians involved in the research actually said, "As I see it, we have no further interest in these patients until they die." The disease itself, in the end, could lead to heart disease, paralysis, blindness, insanity, and death. In 1997, then President Bill Clinton issued an apology to the 8 surviving individuals from that experiment, saying the United States government did something that was wrong, deeply, profoundly, morally wrong. It was an outrage to our commitment to integrity and equality for all citizens. After the end of World War II and the defeat of Nazi Germany, there was a trial of Nazi war criminals called the Nuremberg trial. Now, from that event also came the Nuremberg Code, which was a code developed to ensure and protect the rights of human beings who were kept as prisoners of war or who were kept in any way, really, where there would be confinement. Their essential rights as human beings were to be respected, and that extended to any sort of medical research. As a development on that, in 1964, the World Medical Organization produced a broader guideline to govern biomedical research that is known as the Helsinki Declaration. In 1974, there came in the United States the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. Essentially, that guarantees the privacy and the rights of students to be treated as adults. So I can't divulge or share any information that I gain in the process of teaching outside of an individual interaction with students. I can't share grades. I can't mention grades when I'm writing letters of recommendation. That would be a violation of your rights and privacy. I have to get your consent as a student before I share such information. In 1974, there was also the National Research Act, and this developed guidelines for research that was federally funded. And it also helped to establish the principles that underlie the Institutional Review Board. setting up institutional review boards. Between 1974 and 1979, there was the development of the Belmont Report. Now, the Belmont Report provides 3 specific basic principles for the protection of human subjects. And let me just point out here that even using the term subjects for human beings is ethically problematic. There are reasons for avoiding that term. When we're talking about human beings, we really aren't talking about subjects. A rat would be a subject of an experiment. A dog would be a subject of an experiment. But a human being is, or should be, a willing and active participant in the research, not a subject. So even calling it a human subjects review committee could perhaps be debatable in terms of the appropriateness of the word. The first principle is respect for persons, essentially seeing the individual, whatever their limitations, whatever their age, whatever their physical or mental state, they are still to be seen as persons, having equal dignity and worth in comparison with other persons. This is arguably a principle which stems from the Judeo-Christian ethical foundation of human beings being created in the image of God. If we think about Christian theology, God being one entity in 3 persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, all of these persons having the same value, the same dignity, and the same worth. If that is the case, then if we have beings created in the image and likeness of God, each of these persons have the same value, dignity, and worth. Again, regardless of age, social status, or mental or physical state. The second principle is the principle of beneficence, doing good for other people or doing good towards other people. If we think about beneficence, this goes back to, or arguably could relate back to, the Hippocratic Oath, primum non nocere, first do no harm. At the very least, we should not injure the individual. We should not compromise the individual's mental state or physical state. When they come into research, they should leave in essentially the same state. Maybe a little bit bored, but not in any ways physically or emotionally or psychologically harmed. The third principle is the principle of justice. Is the research just? Are we allowing the person, the human being, to participate in the research? Are we taking advantage of the person in research? Are we respecting the rights of the person in research? Is it just research? Is it going to foster the well-being of humanity as a whole? Is it going to increase human knowledge? Is the increase in human knowledge even worth boring the other person for 30 minutes? If we can say that the research is beneficial and arguably it should go forward, are we exploiting any group? As we look at, again, Nazi Germany or the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, we see an exploitation of certain groups, which is arguably unjust. So what has Trinity done to comply with these rules? Well, it has established an institutional review board made up of faculty members from different backgrounds who look at the incoming research, and really the only purpose, or the main purpose, is to focus on whether this research is ethical. So when you submit research to the committee, we're not going to check your grammar. We're not even really going to evaluate the soundness of the experimental design unless it impacts the ethics of the research. Hopefully your faculty mentors and the people that you're working with in your program will review the research to make sure that it is sound as research. But as we said, the Nazi research was procedurally sound, it was methodologically sound, but it was not ethically sound. And that is our job on the Institutional Review Board, to review it and make sure that it meets ethical standards, that the people that are going to be participants in the research uh, are treated as persons, and that they are not harmed, and that the research itself is just. So, in general, the requirements for the Human Subjects Review Committee, now known as the Institutional Review Board, is that it have at least 5 members. It be made up of males and females of varied professions, although I would say it is helpful to have people from the social sciences on the committee because they have a great deal of experience with research, so it's good to have people from education or from sociology or from psychology, because this is the sort of research that those disciplines actually do. We are authorized, and I say we, at the present time I am the chair of the committee. The Institutional Review Board is authorized to approve, modify, or disapprove research. It's also authorized to observe research, as well as the consent process. Generally, we just look at the consent process, though, and make sure that this is up to par. We can also obtain verification that there are no changes in the research. So if you do make substantial changes in your research as you're carrying it out, these changes should be presented to the committee. And if there's some egregious problem with the research in terms of its ethical soundness, the Institutional Review Board can terminate the research for noncompliance or serious harm. Well, when we talk about research, what is research? Well, we give a definition in the PowerPoint slides available on the committee site, the committee website. Research is a systematic investigation, including research development, testing, evaluation, designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. Activities which meet this definition constitute research for purposes of this policy, whether or not they are conducted or supported under a program, which is considered research for other purposes. For example, some demonstration and service programs might include research activities. We want to make sure that most of the risk that comes to individuals is minimal. What is minimal risk? Well, it means that the probability and potential magnitude of harm or discomfort anticipated in the research are not greater in and of themselves than those ordinarily encountered in daily life or during the performance of routine physical or psychological examinations or tests. So, because of this, we have 3 different criteria for research, 3 different types of research proposal submissions: exempt, expedited, and full. And when we talk about exempt, expedited, and full, I'm going to let you read through the guidelines and discuss with your faculty mentors what these 3 different types actually are. Most of the research you're going to be submitting is going to fall into the expedited category. And just in general, and again, I want you to look at this and discuss this with your faculty, the differences between these 3 criteria. Full is where there might be substantial harm or might be notable harm, and if you're dealing with individuals that fall under a protected category or under a category of a protected or sensitive population. So I'll let you discuss those sorts of things. One of the most important things that you provide when you're doing research, though, is informed consent. Informed consent means that you provide the information, or you provide the participants enough information so that they can understand what's going to happen with them and to them. And you make it known to the participants that the research is voluntary. It is voluntary, that they have the right at any time to withdraw from research without penalty. They can step out of the experiment. They can opt out at any point without penalty or prejudice. So that is really one of the most important things. The other thing is that the individual participating has to comprehend what's being presented to them. So even if you give them a form to sign, you should allow them, if they have any questions, to contact, well, whoever's doing the research. It could be you or it could be your faculty mentor. I do want you, if you have any questions after watching this video, to contact me. Your professor will have my contact information and my phone number. So if you have any concerns or questions as you are preparing your research or as you are conducting your research, please feel free to contact me, and I look forward to discussing any issues you might have. Thank you.